Good evening, and welcome to this week's Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm your host, Bronwyn Lucas, Miss B, the Black Couch Therapist. And we have another amazing guest, as always. And in just a moment, she will introduce herself. But if you've been here before, you know we have to take some deep breaths just to decompress from the day. Before we have some good information. So let's get started. I'll count into four very slowly, and you'll breathe in, and I'll say breathe out, and you'll breathe out to a slow count of four. We'll do it 3 times. So let's get started. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. One more. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. How was that breathing for you, Andrea?
That was good. I needed that. Thank you.
Yes, sometimes we just stop and woosah just to say,
Yeah.
okay, because by the end of the day, so much has happened that we need just a little break to feel good.
Yeah.
So, um, I always ask my guests to tell us who you are and something cool about yourself. So, who are you? And tell us something cool about yourself.
My name is Andrea Williams. I am the Chief Program Officer at CarePartners. We'll talk a little bit about CarePartners later, but it is a nonprofit aimed at serving individuals living with dementia and their family caregivers. And I have been doing this work with individuals with dementia, family caregivers for over 15 years. My career started off at the Alzheimer's Association here in Houston, and throughout my career, I have worked in long term care, I've worked in nonprofits, I've worked in adult day. So, different aspects of caring for caregivers and their loved ones with dementia. And so yeah, so lots of interactions with people with dementia, but a lot of different experiences in different settings working with those individuals.
And dementia is a specific area, and we'll talk just about caregiving in general
Mhm.
and how difficult it is managing life with someone with dementia. But what led you to even get started in this?
Yeah, I didn't mention my thing cool. So the cool thing about
That's
me,
right. I'm
I
sorry.
didn't. That's okay. I'm not gonna let myself off the hook. And
Good for
so
you.
the cool thing about me, I think it is a big part of who I am as an individual, but I am from what I call the metropolis of Sunset, Louisiana. It is a small town, about 1,200, maybe more people. But it is the reason I am who I am today. And the reason I do this work is because of my grandmother who had a diagnosis of dementia. And so she was
Mhm.
diagnosed towards the end of my college career, and my parents, my mom and my aunt, were in full caregiving mode. They showed me the importance of community through how important community was for caregiving, and to be able to sustain caregiving. They taught me a lot about resilience and about love in action, watching them do that work. And so that is why I do what I do here in Houston. And I have committed myself to working with older adults and people living with dementia, and especially their family caregivers because of that experience.
That's amazing. I always say wherever we are right now,
Mhm.
everything that happened prior to this makes us who we are today. And yours seem to have a very powerful impact on who you are today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. So tell us a little before we get into talking about dementia, what is your organization, Care Partners?
Yeah. Care Partners is a nonprofit. Like I said earlier, it has been around for over 40 years. What's really cool about Care Partners is our responsiveness to the needs of the community, especially those individuals in Houston. So we started off back in the 80s caring for individuals with HIV and AIDS. This is before anybody was doing this. So our founders had a grad student who contracted HIV, and so they realized that there were no supports. There was definitely no medical support. There was nothing to support these individuals. So they started a grassroots effort. They connected with all the congregations in Houston, and they started to build these care teams to go into the homes of individuals living with HIV and AIDS and providing care for them throughout their lives, the end of their lives, providing end of life support, feeding them, and doing all of the things for these individuals at a time when it was very scary to do that. And so the rest of the world eventually caught up with us, as you know. And so medicine got better, treatments got better. And so our board decided, they said, there's another, excuse me, group of individuals who need the same care, and it's people with dementia and their family caregivers. And from that point on, we started to serve more individuals living with dementia and their family caregivers. And we do that through a few services. One of them is a no cost respite service that is across the city of Houston,
Oh, wow.
where places of worship mostly are have these volunteer care teams that provide monthly, half day activities for people living with dementia, but a break for their family caregivers
Mhm.
at no cost to them. So they're really building that community for both the individual with dementia and the family caregiver. And then later on in our company history, Houston has two dementia specific adult day centers. One was getting ready to close. And again, the responsiveness of this organization, they said that cannot happen. If this facility closes, it creates a huge gap for family caregivers and people living with dementia. So they decided that they would take that on. And they did that about 4 years ago. Have been operating that dementia day center, adding on to the services for people living with dementia, particularly for those individuals from early to late moderate, the only one of its kind in Houston to be able to provide that support for people on the long disease spectrum. Little bit more about dementia. I like to give a
Let
little.
me ask you before you leave that, where is that located?
We're located in Houston, and so
Where in Houston is it?
I right outside of the medical center in Houston.
Okay.
Right, so we are accessible from lots of points all
Hmm.
over the city. Um, and our hours, we are open 11 hours a day, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., right? And it's affordable in that families can pick full day or half days, and they can decide how often they want to attend. Do they want to come 1 day a week? Do they need to come 5 days a week? It's really based on their need, which is a really neat opportunity for families, especially those families who are like, I need to go to work. I
Hmm.
I just need a break, right? I need to take a nap. I need some time for me. We have a gentleman who plays pickleball, and he is 80 years old. Actually, he's older than 80. He's 85 years old. He is the pickleball champ for his age group. And this is something that he picked up when he was able to bring his wife to the Dementia Day Center. So he
Hmm.
was able to pour into himself, get a new hobby, and become very good at it just because
That is so
he had
important.
access to a service. Yeah. Yeah.
It is so important to be able to pour into yourself. Let me ask you: are there other? You guys are in Houston, and you're specific to that. Do you know if these type of services are offered other places?
Yeah, there's adult day services all over the country. There's the National Adult Day Services Association. So if you're looking for an adult day, you can try there. If you are in the DFW area, you can look at the area agencies on aging would have information, and the Alzheimer's Association, whichever local chapter, you give them a call and they can tell you what's available to you. And then there's the good old fashioned Google search, right? That'll help you to find that as well.
You know, when we hear about dementia, before we get started on the caregivers, just the whole idea of dementia, what can you explain what it is? Because it's scary to some people,
Yeah.
just even thinking about dementia. So, what is dementia?
So, dementia is an umbrella term used to describe a set of symptoms. So, if those symptoms are going to be severe enough to interfere with your everyday life, they're going to affect your cognitive functioning, your executive functioning, that's your judgment, your reasoning, sometimes your concentration. Sometimes they're going to affect balance, your mood, and personality. So, it just depends on the type. And so, there are different causes of dementia. And so what we hear most often is Alzheimer's disease. That is the most common form or common type of dementia. So the best way to I use different analogies to help families or people understand. So if someone says, I have cancer, the next question you're going to ask is what type of cancer. It's
Hmm.
the same thing with dementia. What type of dementia? What is causing the dementia? And then you can get a little bit more information about what that might look like for the individual. So in Alzheimer's disease, we're going to see short-term memory loss. And then maybe in something like frontal temporal dementia, you're going to see more behavioral issues or behavior changes in that individual. You might see them saying more in what we might deem socially inappropriate things because of where the damage is in the brain.
How many different types of dementia are there?
There are over 80 types of dementia, and sometimes the two can exist in the same person. It just depends.
Mm. That's a lot. When we think about caregivers, because I really want to focus on that tonight, but I think we needed a baseline of understanding
Yeah.
dementia. And, there are the memory deficits, as you said, with Alzheimer's. There is the inappropriate speech with
Mhm.
frontal lobe dementia. And there's so many different ways a person changes
Yeah.
once they have dementia. So one of the things I see is that once a person has dementia, the person you knew, if it's your parent, the mom, dad you knew, is not the person you have now.
Yeah.
What can you say about that?
Yeah, that is very true, right? So some of the behaviors are going to be different. How they appear will be very different when you are thinking about an individual with dementia, and so you may see um, the personality changes are big. I used to. This is a story that I told as a community educator, but it is true with my grandmother. Is that she was all of our first teacher. She has 10 grandchildren, and she was our first place. And we went there before we went to school. And she taught us how to write our names and all of those beautiful things. And then when we get to the next generation, as she started to care for some of her great grandchildren, they learned a whole different vocabulary because at that point we are using more profanity, more vulgar speech than she ever had in any of our lives. And that was an apparent change for who she is and who she had been for us. But the beauty in the work that we're able to do when we are able to connect and give purpose or connect the purpose of the individual with activities in our dementia day center or through different engagement is that we get to see them at the point of this disease and still get to see glimmers of personality and who
Mm.
they are. We get to see the dancing and the joy that they still have, and that's still in there, right? But for family caregivers, it's hard because you're still grieving that individual and who they were, right? And it's a long grieving process because
Yes.
just when you think you're getting the hang of it, just when you think you understand, then there's a change, and it signals another loss or more loss of that individual.
And I think it's so important that you noted about the grieving process. We often think of the grieving process after a person has transitioned when they're no longer here. But as I said, the person you have before you is
Hmm.
not the person you knew, and you end up grieving the parent you knew or loved one that you knew.
Hmm.
And even though they're right here, there's someone right here. That's not the person you grew up with. That's not the person you loved.
Yeah.
So you do grieve them.
Yeah, you do. You're grieving that relationship, the change in the relationship. You're grieving that individual and how they were, right? And you're grieving your plans,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you, as a nobody signs up to be
Right.
caregivers. Um, I read um, I read some data in the AARP, and they mentioned that a large percentage, like over half of the African Americans they polled, stated that they had a choice in whether or not they would become a family caregiver. I think that might just be a cultural thing that, like, I have decided that I'm going to care for this person. But
Mm-hmm.
even with that choice, I don't think anyone is prepared to do this job, right? Because it is definitely a full time job. You are definitely getting on the job training, and it also comes with a lot of regret and guilt. And did I say the right thing? I feel so bad for snapping at mom this morning. You know,
Right.
all of those things that are because you're human doing something that requires all of you. and you are also required to do a lot of other things. So it comes up, this person has a cognitive impairment, but you are also human, right? So your patients are going to be short. You're sleeping less,
Mhm.
you're eating less, you're not taking care of yourself. So sometimes you're going to be frustrated and snapped, and that's just a part of human nature and giving yourself grace.
For sure. And
Mhm.
you don't often think of it as a choice. Like you said, oh, well, what else am I going to do? Especially
Yeah.
in the African American community, until recently, we didn't place family members in nursing homes and
No.
things. They stayed at home. And that was part of the cultural
Mhm.
norms. And so with dementia, and part of it, sometimes people are worried about putting them in that situation because they don't know if they're going to be taken care of well.
Yes.
There's this fear that they won't be taken care of well. And then as the dementia, as the brain function declines, they won't be able to tell you what's going on. So
Correct.
there is a fear there. So yes, more and more will keep their family member at home.
Mhm.
What would you say are some specific issues? Um, well, let me ask you this first. Do you think there's such a thing as a normal day in the life of a caregiver?
I do not, because I don't think there's such a thing as a normal day in the life of caregiving, because, especially for a dementia caregiver, because it's going to be very dependent on that individual, right?
Mhm.
Both the caregiver and the person living with dementia. And what are the other things, are the other challenges that accompany the dementia? Do they also have a diagnosis of, are they also diabetic? Do they need insulin? um, does it come with a lot of anxiety as well? Are they not sleeping well at night? All of those things are going to impact a typical day. But we do know that we do know, based on research and surveys and feedback, that African Americans are going to be more likely, we're going to be more likely to do more activities of daily living. So our caregiving is going to be a lot more intense, meaning we're going to be doing more of the bathing, the feeding, the
Mm.
toileting, the dressing. That's what comes along with what we're doing in our culture as we're caring for people. We're going to be doing a lot more of that. So our caregiving is going to be a lot more intense. It's going to be a lot more physically stressful for us to do those things.
Why are we doing more of that in our community?
I think it's because we are more likely to have the individuals stay at home with us than other populations. So that's still happening,
Mhm.
right? We're still caring for people in the home in comparison to other groups, other family caregivers. We're still caring for them in the home. And it could be also the types of diseases we're caring for require a lot
Mhm.
more assistance in that way. When you
And
think
I'm
about
wondering if finances play a role in that.
it,
We maybe can't afford as
yes.
much as
Mhm.
someone to come in every day and
Right.
help caregive. Because I've seen situations where it was a couple and one had to stay home while the other one became the only breadwinner, and it may have been a two-income household, but it was actually more economically feasible to become a one-income household because of the caregiving role.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
What are
And
some other ways families' lives are changed as they become a caregiver?
um, a lot of individuals have to make the decision to retire, right? Right. I could keep doing this, or I can retire and not have to balance both.
Hmm.
African Americans are also more likely to be in that sandwich generation where they are caring for children in the home and also caring for a parent or another older adult. And so that changes and impacts your life in a different way, right? How am I going to make sure mom has the care that she needs, while I'm also able to make sure that if I can, I'm taking my children on family vacations and I'm able to go to their
Hmm.
sporting events and I'm able to balance work and all of those things. And having to do that are all ways that it's impactful or impacting how we care.
Yes, because as I said earlier, your life is totally changed. It's turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my work, I sometimes see people who are in a caregiving role, not just with dementia, but other illnesses or just in that caregiving role. And there's guilt about the days you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
What can you say to that to let our audience know that's normal?
Yeah. That is normal, right? Again, remember, we didn't sign up to do this. This is not a job that you signed up for it, you're doing it, but you did not get the training to do this job.
Hmm.
It is relentless in that it is a 24/7 job. It doesn't stop. It's routinely taking care of appointments. It is making sure they're okay. And when they're not with you or when they're with someone else, you're worried about are they getting the adequate care and support that they need. It's the anxiety of how they're going to be when you pick them up after a long day of work. If you do have outside support, what's going to happen when you walk into the house? So all of those things are true, right, of caregiving. And I heard a chaplain speak at a talk. His name is Dr. Ben Faust, and he reminded me of something that I love to share with people.
Hmm.
And it talks about self care, right? And the three things that self care are. Because before in this role, I kind of cringed when I went and spoke to caregivers about self care because it was almost like we're always talking about taking walks and naps and bubble baths, right? Right. And those things they have a place, right? But that's
Hmm.
not sustaining you.
Right.
It's not going to sustain you. And so it was some reminders that he gave, and he talked about self care being discipline,
Mm.
right? Is the ability to say no, the ability to ask for help, even when it's uncomfortable. That is making sure you're taking care of yourself. It is stewardship, which is meaning it's like this, it's ongoing intentional care for your most valuable resource, because we've all heard you need to pour from your own cup, you need to fill your own cup up first, but that is true. And then it's also respect, right? That's self-care is self-respect. It's
Yeah.
saying that my dreams matter, my time matters, all of those things still matter. And so when caregivers are feeling guilt, the thing that I often want them to kind of think about or give them permission to do is to give themselves grace, but also remember that all of these things, first of all, we're not very good at taking care of ourselves anyway. But then you add on reasons not to take care of yourself,
And
it gets
we just get pushed under the rug.
pushed under the rug. So that guilt is there. The way you help yourself in that guilt is to give yourself permission to understand that you are doing a very hard thing
Hmm.
that you were not trained to do, that you don't know when it's going to end, that sometimes it's hard for you to even find the joy in it, and then that is okay. But there's another person that needs to be cared for, and that is you. And to make sure that you find some time for that for yourself as well.
I find so many that feel that self care is selfish. And I'm like, no, it's survival.
It is. It is.
Because if you don't take care of you, you don't survive, and neither does the other person. And I always remind them when you're on an airplane, what do they say? When the mask falls down, whose mask do you put on first?
Yours.
Yours. And
Yours.
I often ask people why, and they're stunned. I said, think of it this way: if you don't, you fall out, who's going to take care of them?
Who's
And
gonna
if
take
they
care?
do get a mask and they have special needs, no one's going to know those needs
Yeah,
but you. So
you
you
can.
will not be in place to take care of them. So
Exactly.
it's not selfish. It's survival for you and the person you're taking care of.
It is. It is. It really is. And it's really hard because it is a people feel like it's a selfless job, and it is.
Hmm.
But yourself is doing it, so you do have to take care of yourself in the process.
Right.
Yeah.
When you think about it, excuse me, are there some needs that are specific to caregivers of dementia that may be different from other areas of caregiving?
Yeah. I think one of the big differences I can highlight is the intensity of the care that you're giving.
Mm.
Again, because dementia can last. People can live with dementia for a very long time,
Yes.
right? And so, and then it's going to be changes, and it's constant changes for what the person needs, and it's progressive. So your help intensifies on this journey. And so the particular need is to everybody needs this, but for sure you need community, right? You need someone to share um, things with. You need someone to, even if it's you're in an area where you don't have access to these great respite resources, you need to identify people in your community that can help you to care give,
Mhm.
right? That's that asking for help. One of the great places to do this, and even in the most remote places, there's a support group, a caregiver support group, and support groups are really great for um, finding out how to get help because there are people that have been along the
Mhm.
journey. They know the resources, they know someone, and so they can connect you to that. So I think getting in community is the best thing that you can do, understanding what the resources are, right? Um, Also making sure you know how to get connected to those resources while they're available or if they're available to you. And then you're going to need to set up the other thing is some legal and financial documents for when the person is no longer able to care for themselves. And then there are tons of resources. The Alzheimer's Association kind of walks through that. And I'm not a lawyer, so there's the best place to go. But
Right.
understanding um, what you need and how you need to be able to make decisions for this individual when they are no longer able to make those decisions for themselves. And I think the earlier you can do that, the better off that you are, because it gets a lot more difficult once that cognition begins to decline.
Mhm.
You can't make those decisions. It's not going to be easy to make those decisions. Um, I would encourage, I always say this, but I would encourage adult children, family members to start that early. Find someone you trust, get them on your bank
Mhm.
accounts, have those conversations with them so that if cognitive impairment happens, it's already in motion and that is already set and there's already a person identified. I think the legal and financial issues are big
Mhm.
ones for families to kind of talk about. The other is I talked about respite and help for yourself, but a plan. If something happens to you while you're caregiving, which often does, what is
Mhm.
the plan for that individual? Who's going to step in? What is that going to look like for them? Being able to write out routines and what they need and all of those things and have them available as your emergency plan so that if someone else needs to step in and provide care, that they are able to do so. And then if you need to get your own care, you feel ready to do that because you have these things in place for someone to step in your place and provide care.
And I think we often forget the legal side of it, like you were
Yeah.
saying, putting all this into place and having things in writing.
Yes.
And I'm like you, I'm not an attorney, but we both know that things need to be put in writing and you need to access an attorney or some kind of legal services if it,
Yes.
that can help you um, figure out how to do that. It's not anything that you would know on your own if it's not your area, just like not knowing how to be a caregiver for
Yeah.
someone with dementia or
Yeah.
even other illnesses. No one, there really isn't a playbook for it.
No, it's not.
And that legal aspect is something we have to do as well.
Mhm.
Last thing I want to ask you, what can you tell, if someone wants to know, how can I support a caregiver? What can I do to support a caregiver? I know they need help. What can you say to that?
I'm going to give you the first thing is going to be very general, and is to remind them or to give them permission to do the things. Their life looks a little different, but they had dreams, they had goals, they had um, things set out for their future before they became caregivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I would tell them to give them permission and help the caregiver give themselves permission to still do those things.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to allow them to be able to care. If it was so, one of my favorite stories of pertaining to that is a couple, they had been married 75 years and she
Wow.
was caring for him through COVID. And she was a volunteer at the cancer center here in Houston. It was the thing that she's always done. And she had done that for over 50 years. She showed up for people, for the doctors, for everyone. And it was
Mm-hmm.
so life giving to her. Right. And so as soon as everything opened back up and she was able to go, she found our Dementia Day Center and said, "Hey, I need this service. I need this because for me, this volunteerism, this fills up my cup and I need to connect and be able to do that."
Mm.
And so she got that support for herself. She gave herself permission to do what she loves so that she can continue to be and
Mhm.
provide that care to her loved one. So give them permission to do what they need to do. The other is give them a safe space to be able to talk about those regrets, that guilt, and get the validation and encouragement that they need,
Mhm.
that they're doing the right thing. The other is encourage them to get help. Sometimes they don't know what to ask for. So we used to say, I used to tell people we have a care consultation service too, where professionals will talk to family caregivers at no cost about anything. And one of the things that one of the care consultants always says is make a list of all the things that you need and put them on the refrigerator. And so when someone asks, can I do something for you? You don't have to think about it. You go to your list and say, okay, I need you to pick up my laundry this week. I need you to do laundry for me this week. And so you don't have to start thinking about it because you already know the list of things that need to be done. So offering them support in a way that you can do the things that you know they need. I know that meals are very hard. Let me make sure I have some meals there.
Mhm.
I know that washing clothes are a task. Let me make sure I do that. Match what you can do with what they need. Um,
Mhm. Mm.
Permission, be a resource for them, connect them to other resources, hear this talk, and then share with them. Hey, you can go to the Area Agency on Aging wherever you live. The Alzheimer's Association has a chapter all in every major city and every place here in Houston, I mean, here in Texas. Get connected to the Alzheimer's Association. They will get you to the resources near you, but give them permission to get that help and support and to be that support for them.
Awesome. We are out of time. I hope this was brought a lot of light to people and so many good things you said. You know, dementia is something that impacts every family at one time or another in one way or another.
Mhm.
Um, so I really wanted to just highlight that it's running rampant in the African American community. And it not only affects the health of the person with dementia, but it definitely impacts the mental health of the caregivers.
Does.
And that's why I wanted to just highlight that today. So I want to thank you for coming out. And we always end our show with a call to action. My call to action for this show is if you're a caregiver, whether it's for dementia or not, take care of yourself. If you know someone who's a caregiver, be able to be there for them. And they always say, vote, vote, vote. Be an educated voter. Your voting can impact how caregivers are taken care of. Well, I'm Miss B, the Black Couch Therapist, and I'm here to help you become a better you. And we will see you next week.